Tracy Walders, former FBI agent, professor of criminal justice, with us now. Look, Tracy, journalists, FBI agents, none of us are trained to believe in coincidences, but at the same time, we're also trained to follow the evidence. And at least all the law enforcement officials who look into this keep saying over and over that there's no evidence of foul play and there's no evidence. So where are we?
You know, I think to your point, what you said, and I think the most important piece of this is actually the clusters that you were talking about. You know, the reality is we are going to have accidental drownings. That it happens. There's no question about that. But what is very unusual here are these clusters that you mentioned. And the fact that it really coincides with that 1-year break that you mentioned in Chicago. And really during that 1-year break is when those clusters picked back up in Austin. And look, I'm a very pragmatic, logical person. I do not ascribe to conspiracy theories, but I'm sorry, there's just too many coincidences here and the same type of demographic of the victims that are appearing in these clusters.
Yeah, and to the point, at some point when you have 11 deaths in Chicago, 7 in Austin, the statistics, I've been looking at this, just don't match up, that it would be so many young men so close together in the exact same sort of circumstances. At what point does it become statistically impossible? And what I'm curious when we hear this, because these are men sort of all fit a same pattern on and on and on, why the FBI wouldn't be more focused on something like this.
You know, I think that that's a great point, Leland. And part of me wonders, and I'm just hypothesizing here, this was originally born out of what you mentioned before, that Smiley Face Killer theory. And that really came about in the late 90s, you know, early 2000s, 2010, where we found that, you know, 45 bodies of males, same age, same demographic, were found with those smiley faces and graffiti next to them. And I think people started ascribing to that as being a conspiracy theory, and law enforcement as a result sort of brushed these off. And for a while, really for about 10, 12 years, these crimes died down. And so I think we're just seeing a reoccurrence of them. And I think that may be why it didn't get the investigatory spotlight that I feel that it probably needed from the beginning.
Help us understand, if these bodies are, you know, retrieved from the water and then turned over to the families and buried. Obviously, you've got families that are distraught and on and on and on. If it's not treated as a murder from the very beginning, how much evidence in all of these cities, and especially in Austin and Chicago, might have been lost if later we learn, hey, these were part of some kind of 6 serial killers' travels?
You know what, Leland, that is an excellent question, and one that I really haven't been asked about this. I think that's really key here, because these were not treated as murders or as homicides. Some of them do have a manner of death as being undetermined. Really, evidence in those cases wouldn't be preserved, because everything would be released back to the families. Now, some of these families, particularly in the Austin cases, have hired private investigators. And so as a result, information may be preserved as a result of those. But digital evidence, you know, their cell phones, all of that data most likely is not preserved. And those are key pieces of evidence that we would need to see what their final locations were and when their bodies really ended up in the water. We would have lost a ton of evidence. And really what we're stuck with now are simply autopsy reports.
Wow. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Tracy, I know you brought this up on your Twitter feed with some really, really thoughtful insights, and we appreciate you joining us tonight. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.